topic today is listening to the dead. Why would I choose such a topic? Listening to the dead. Well, there's some different reasons that I would choose that. First, the theme for my fall sermons, as you may remember, is transitions. And what a big transition death is. Death is a huge transition. That's one reason. Also, it's October. And October is a time for considering death as we approach the holidays. And some folks say, with all these holidays you're reading about there, that perhaps maybe the veil is a little thinner during this time, especially late October, between living and dead. So it's a good time to try to listen to the dead, perhaps. And then I've had this book by my bedside for quite some time. This book was given to me by one of you. It's called Passings, Death, Dying, and Unexplained Phenomena by Carol A. Travis Pentecost. This woman is an anthropologist, a paleoanthropologist, and a lot of this book is about what's happened in her life, her own life. It's very interesting. The person that gave it to me said, oh, it was a page turner. She just couldn't wait till she got home from work every day to read more of it. So I thought, oh, that's what it's going to be. But for me, I struggled with it more. So we can kind of analyze that a little bit. Why I struggled with it more. I was finding other excuses not to read it. You know, I have work I have to do on other things, other projects. But I kept on going back and reading it, and it was indeed very interesting. The woman had herself had one of these near-death experiences, and perhaps that experience for herself put her in a frame of mind, allowed her to wear certain lenses that perhaps I don't have. Should it put her in a different frame of mind for perhaps being able to see some things that when I read about what she writes about, I'm reading it from a more skeptical, rational viewpoint, and I'm not seeing the same kinds of things. I'm finding reasons that it's not the way she says it is, but she's finding ways that it is the way she says it is. Have you ever been in conversation with folks like that? Because you're reading it through different lens and seeing it from different ways. So at least it gave me, while she didn't convince me, because I was, I guess, not born with the gift of the same kind of faith she has, perhaps. We're all born with different gifts. But it helped me a lot in having an understanding of why folks would look at these different kind of phenomena and say, you know, that it's a real phenomena for them. It's something that they can feel assured about. So I would encourage you to maybe get that a copy. That was another reason. And let's see, the last reason is because we try to have things in common here. You know, even though we have very different theologies, very different ideas, so I try to preach on things that we all have in common. And guess what? We all die. Everything dies. Even this universe will die. You know, the sun is going to die. Everything eventually dies. Not only us, but everything else. So it's certainly a topic that everyone should have some connection with. And we all have loved ones, of course, that die as well. Now, I had already decided to do this. Had it, shared it with folks, had it down on the paper. This past Monday, I made arrangements to have dinner with a friend of mine. This was a friend that I had back in high school. She was a year behind me in high school. And we had become, we were acquaintances and somewhat friends, but not close friends. She, however, is living on St. Simon's Island, which I now live part of the time on St. Simon's Island. So we were, about 5 years ago, we became Facebook friends. You know, you connect with these folks from long ago. I have not seen her, though, in 45 years and had a conversation with her. But we were on Facebook together, and I said, hey, I'm in St. Simon some of the time. We could get together. So, indeed, she invited me to have dinner with her, and we had dinner at a new restaurant there. This may look familiar because it used to be the 4th of May. It's on the corner of Ocean Boulevard and Mallory. It closed, and now there's a new restaurant there, but don't be too sad because the new restaurant is fabulous. It's called Del Sur, and it serves Argentinian and Italian food. It's wonderful. So she invited me to go out to eat with her. So we went to the old 4th of May, and we had dinner there. We stayed there for 3 hours and talked, and I had not seen her, I said, before. Well, we had not been there 10 minutes, and she starts telling me about going to this psychic, and this psychic coming to St. Simon's, from Texas, goes from the Hilton Head, goes to St. Simon's, and about 40 of the women there that live on St. Simon's have what they call a circle of light. And I said, well, you know, that's kind of woo-woo itself, and she's telling me about this, and I'm thinking, wow, that's my sermon this Sunday, ooh, with Twilight Zone. So I said, tell me more, tell me more. So I, you know, kept serving her some more wine, she kept telling me more. But she was telling me about this. It was very interesting, and it really is like an old-time seance. And they get in this circle of light, and the woman comes, and it's very similar, and from what she told me, to what I've seen on television with some of these TV psychics. Very similar kind of thing. Initially, the woman goes through and feels like people are coming across to her, or she gets these messages and says something like, I'm getting a message. She told my friend, I'm getting a message from Geraldine, from somebody here. And my friend said, oh, that must be my cousin Jerry, because she's passed over, you know. Oh, yes, that's who it is. And then they talk about that, and, you know. Well, my friend is very much a believer, because they keep inviting this woman back. And not only they invite the Circles of Light, then you can have a private reading for more money. Okay? Like I said. But then as we talked, I said to my friend, after we were talking for a good while, I said, well, what is this like for you? What has this done for you? And she was so appreciative, because she said she had a very difficult time, especially with 2 of the deaths in her family. That it really caused her a lot of turmoil. And that now she knew that they were happy, and that had brought her a sense of peace and well-being. And I thought to myself, well, then that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Regardless maybe of what my thinking on it is, I thought she is happy now that she, and not only, but this may sound a little different for some of you, not only was it her relatives and friends she heard from, she felt like that she had gotten messages, or the woman had said she had messages from her dogs, you know, that this other woman was taking care of her dogs and things like that. I'm kind of going, wait a minute. But for her, it was very comforting, because she had been close to her pets, and so this was a comforting thing for her. And so I had to, and I got her name, and I went back and looked her up. The woman's name is Dwana Paul. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of her. You've heard of Dwana Paul. All right, she's from Texas, and she has been, this is from her website, she has been a trance medium since childhood. And over the past 35 years, she's been bringing healing and comfort to people around the world with her messages from the spirit dimensions. Now, I watched some of her videos, and she has some things that when she's getting these, she says there's the little lights around. And she says that the lights come so quickly that you can't see them in person. But if you go back and look at the video, you can see the lights. Well, of course, a skeptic like me is thinking, you know. Then I have to do like this and say, you know, be understanding. So, I struggle with this, because I know it helps people, and yet all of my other stuff comes forth that says, wait a minute, these people are making money off of this. People are distressed and sad, and they're taking advantage of this to comfort them. Then I thought, well, heck, they're paying me at you know? What's the difference? Okay? You know, so then I slapped myself again. So I've done a lot of study of this, though, and I found out that a lot of this really started. Of course, there have been people, if you look way back in history, that there have always been ideas that some ghost has returned or something like this. But where this idea of mediums really spread like wildfire started with the Fox sisters. Now, the Fox sisters, that's Margarita, Kate, and Leah. They're from New York. They really played an important role in this thing called spiritualism. There were 2 younger ones, Maggie and Kate. And Maggie and Kate were up in their room and living in this old house, and they started, one of them learned how to pop her toes. I don't know if any of you can pop your toes. I can't. I can snap my fingers and sometimes, but they learned to pop their toes. And they taught the other one. It was a loud pop noise, how to pop their toes. And they decided to trick their mama and let their mama think it was something else. And then they also did other things like letting something roll down the steps, things like that. So the mother became convinced that maybe a relative that had died was coming back to see them. And the mother became so convinced she told the neighbors about it. So then the girls felt like they had to go along with it then, because then they'd be making a fool out of their mother. So the neighbors came in and they repeated their noise makings and said yes. They even had, the rap, 1 for yes, 2 for no. They were asking questions, those kinds of things. So they did. The neighbors asked questions about their dead loved ones, and of course they knew the neighbors. They were able to give them enough information. They became convinced as well. Well, their older sister, Leah, she heard about it. She lived in Rochester. She came and got them to confess to her. And Leah was sort of a businesswoman, so she thought, wow, this is cool. So Leah brought them to Rochester, and they started this whole business with the seances and inviting people in and making a lot of money off of this. And once they got a lot of notoriety about it, then at other places, people started doing it all over the place. Not only in America did it spread like wildfire, but also in Europe. Really spread in England. They were doing all these seances and spiritualism. And since that time, it's sort of gone up and down in popularity. And of course now with television, we have these TV psychics, or you can have psychics from the internet or on the telephone. You can dial a psychic. All those kinds of things come forth. Now, eventually, Maggie, the middle daughter, confessed. And she shared all about what was really happening. That's how I knew about the coke popping and stuff like that. So she confessed it all. And so then their reputation just went down the drain. So then she tried to undo the confession, but by then it was, too late. So they ended up, 2 of them, they died tragic kind of deaths. 2 of them, then they were poor. They went from really hauling it in to poverty. And they died in poverty, one of them alcoholism. Within 5 years after she confessed, all 3 of them were dead. So the practices of seances still have spread through America and Europe, and there still are popular psychics today. This guy, I don't know if you've heard of him, his name is James Randi. Now, if you start studying this much, you'll run across James Randi, because James Randi was a magician for 60 years of his life. It's called The Amazing Randi. Did all kind of magic tricks. Then when he retired from being a magician, he enjoyed magic, but he said he really feels very strongly that the psychics are, unlike me when I heard my friend Jane, say that she was comforted, I'm thinking this is a good thing. James Randi does not feel that. He thinks it's a very bad thing, because he thinks it's misleading people, it's giving them some kind of false hope, it's not, you're fooling people, So he thinks, and you're taking their money. That's why he kind of feels about it. So he has made it sort of his passion to out these people as frauds, and he's done a lot of it. He'll be on a TV show, and they'll have him come in at the same time. The person like Johnny Carson did that. He had him, and some of these very famous ones, you can see him over and over again, where he's shown that what they're doing is sometimes deceiving. Now, some people say, well, maybe some of it's deception and some of it's not. But in any case, even though he's done this over and over again, he's published widely with this stuff, with what he finds out. He shows how it's done, how a lot of these, even the guy that used to, remember for a while it was real popular, the guy bending the spoons and that kind of thing. Shows how it's done, all these things are done. Folks that want to believe are going to believe anyway. It's like you could show them all kinds of evidence, and basically it's no, this has been my experience, and this is what I believe. And, all of us are that way to a certain degree. Sometimes it's hard for us to get out of that box that we have decided this is the way it is. I'm at least trying to understand, trying to see it through the other lens, even if I don't necessarily have a full personal understanding of it. At least I have an understanding of where someone's coming from. But the folks that he's shown these things to would know, I believe it, they told me this, I know my dad spoke to me, I know he's told me this, that, I know he's in heaven, and that he's telling me these kinds of things, and most of the messages are positive for them. Well, as I studied this even more, I found out that you too can be a psychic. Now, not all of us can be psychics, but if we have a gift, if you are one of these people that have a gift for reading people, for seeing how they are moving, reading body language, and a lot of that you can practice. If you have that gift of being able to kind of understand where people are coming from and listen carefully to them, then you could be a psychic. And there's things on the internet that tells you how to do it. So here's how you can be a psychic. First of all, these techniques were shared. There's a lot of information about how to do a cold read. They're cold readings and hot readings. A cold reading is like if I were coming here and I didn't know things about you, supposedly, and I didn't have any idea about anything about you, and I did a cold reading, I would say some general kind of thing like there's a Matt or a Matthew coming to me that died, and there was some kind of difficulty about his death, and he's trying to reach out to somebody here. Is there anybody here? Who is that, you know? And maybe one of you has a cousin or somebody, and so then you go with that, and then you find out they'll tell you this, oh yes, this was my cousin that died in the auto crash. Then you can kind of go, well, he wants you to know that, you know, something about the crash or whatever that, so it's a practice of doing that kind of thing. And actually, people in here, we have folks in here that work in psychology and psychiatry, it's almost like a Rogerian kind of, you sort of listen and feedback just enough to get more. You know, you've done that in counseling. It's sort of like that, except you're doing it, saying it's coming from, instead of, you're doing it as if it's a dead person telling you, instead of it being a technique. But I do that kind of thing in my pastoral counseling. I listen, I feed enough back and get a little more so people can kind of solve things on their own. And in a way, that's what these folks are doing. They're doing a sort of counseling, but it's in a little more way. You know, people feel good about it afterwards. So, here's how you do a cold read. Selecting the subjects, there are various techniques, including shotgunning. They have all these things they call it. Shotgunning is kind of what I just did. You throw something general out and get something back. Observe visual clues and body language. They teach people you should be looking at things like you notice things that they're wearing a wedding ring or not. And then you know that they have a partner, perhaps, you know, that kind of thing. So you can, those kinds of clues, even what they're wearing, how they're dressed, they can teach you certain things that kind of let you understand more about that. So you read these clues, you listen to their language, visual body language. You prepare the subject, especially if you do it one-on-one, and you prepare them. And one of the ways you prepare them is let them know that you may be wrong sometimes. You know, some of these things come through. Now, I might not get it just right because it's difficult sometimes, and it might not. So you prepare them to let them know that you won't be entirely accurate. It might take you asking some more questions before you can get it right because it's not a clear channel all the time, you know. So that way you kind of give yourself an out. Doing the read with such tactics as fishing, going deeper with what they shared, Barnum statements. That comes from the circus person, and I forgot what the Barnum statement was. Oh, a Barnum statement may be something that is so big that everybody just about has it. Someone's lost a loved one recently. You know, okay. I'll double check that. And then covering your errors. You know, you said, oh yes, this person, Matt, yes, they died a sudden death. The person says, oh no, that was a long run. Well, maybe this is another relative of yours whose name started with M. You cover. They teach you how to kind of cover for those. And you can go to school and learn to do this. There are people that will take your money to teach you how. Okay? I got these from something called WikiHow, where someone that came in that had been doing these and was sharing how to do it. And so he gave me all this information, but it was funny how he said it when he told all how to do it. He was somebody that did it himself. He said, now be sure though, gave himself out. When you do this, this is just for a party entertainment thing. Don't do this, let them know it's a trick. You know, but you know people are going to take these kinds of things and really do it. But he said, you shouldn't do this under false pretense. Do it for fun, and then let them know what you did, that it was a trick. And then there are hot reads. This is what a lot of psychics do, is hot reads. And that's where they gather information about you. Now, like the John Edwards show, if you go to that, they say that you have to fill out cards to begin with, and the cards will have different questions on it. But everybody has assigned seats, and so your card may ask a certain question, and somebody else is something else. So they have all this information. And then, one of the guys that went to it said, then there was a technical difficulty, to give them time to prepare, you know. And then, of course, yes, he can kind of know that it's seat number 31, that this is what's going on here. So that's a hot read, where you got information. And when they do private readings and know that they're going to be speaking with people, they can even, some of them even hire private detectives. Or now, of course, with the internet, you can find out so much about it. So you gather a lot of information first. And then you match that also with the things that you do with the cold read, where you get them to tell you more information. And what's interesting is sometimes they didn't say, oh, no, I didn't tell them anything. But yes, in the conversation, they did tell them some things that let them know about the death of these loved ones. So when you read a lot of this, that makes you even more skeptical as you read and see how these folks do it. But that's a hot read. Now, I did all this because I wanted to be able to listen to the dead, of course, and I found out that indeed, I too can listen to the dead. I am a medium, I have that ability, but unlike some of these psychics, I don't get the message in the same way. Now, you heard me share about my dad. I still hear my dad all the time, but I hear my dad from my memories of what he told me. I hear my dad when I see things he made and why he made them. So those are the kind of ways that I listen to my dad. That's how I hear my dad, the messages. But I also have heard messages from dead Unitarian Universalists. They have for us. They've sent to you all through me as your medium, okay? And the way I got those messages is this. They wrote them down, you know? And so you go to the library or you go to the internet and you can find out messages from the dead. So with our little bit of remaining time, I want to give you some messages for some dead Unitarian Universalists for you folks, okay? Ooh, the first one's coming in. It's from the same guy that wrote Let It Be a Dance. He's a poet, Rick Maston. He died of prostate cancer. Very difficult death, but he wrote a lot even while he was dying. He wrote a poem that I love called In Line. He says, I've always been a yin-yang, front-back, clear, blur, up-down, life-death kind of guy. My own peculiar duality being philosopher/hypochondriac win-win characteristics when you've been diagnosed with advanced prostate cancer. Finally, the hypochondriac has more than windmills to tilt with. The philosopher arming himself with exactly the proper retardant and explosive statement found in an email message beneath the signature line of a cancer survivor's name. A perfect in-line, wily and wise quote. I ask God, how much time do I have before I die? Enough to make a difference, God replies. That's your message from Rick Masson. Ooh, what about a message from me as a preacher? I'm getting one from that famous Unitarian minister, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Yes, he's coming to me now. What does he have to say to me? He says, I once heard a preacher who sorely tempted me to say I would go to church no more. A snowstorm was falling around us. The snowstorm was real. The preacher merely spectral, and I felt the sad contrast in looking at him and then out the window behind him into the beautiful meteor of the snow. He had lived in vain. He had no one word intimating that he had laughed or wept, was married or in love, had been commended or cheated or chagrined. The capital secret of his profession, namely to convert life into truth, he had not learned. He just preached on other stuff. And he says, this man had plowed and planted and talked and bought and sold. He had read books. He had eaten and drunken. His head aches. His heart throbs. He smiles and suffers. Yet there was not a surmise, a hint in all of that discourse that he had ever lived at all. The true preacher, says Emerson to me, can be known by this, that he deals out to the people his life passed through the fire of thought. Amen. I try. Amen. Ooh, need a woman in here. Come on, Olympia Brown. Olympia Brown, first female in a mainstream, that was ordained by a mainstream denomination, ordained by the Universalists. What does she have to say? She says, the grandest thing has been the lifting up of the gates and the opening of the doors to the women of America, giving liberty to 27 million women, thus opening them to a new and larger life and a higher ideal. And she says, he who never sacrificed a present to a future good or a personal to a general one can speak of happiness only as the blind do of colors. They haven't experienced it. You have to sacrifice to the present to a future good. One of my favorite dead people, one of my favorite dead Unitarians, Forrest Church. He gave us some mantras to live by. He also knew that he was going to die. And he had a lot of mantras. Here they are. Religion is our human response to the dual reality of being alive and having to die. We are the religious animal. Knowing that we must die, we cannot help but question what life means. We are more alike in our ignorance than we differ in our knowledge. Ooh, we are more alike in our ignorance than we differ in our knowledge. God is not God's name. God is our name for that which is greater than all and yet present in each. Whether or not there is life after death, surely there is love after death. The one thing that can never be taken from us, even by death, is the love we give away before we die. The purpose is to live in such a way that our lives will be proved worthy of dying for. He says, after death, our bodies may be resurrected. Our souls may transmigrate or become part of the heavenly pleroma. We may join our loved ones in heaven, or we may return to the constituent parts of our being to the earth from which it came and rest in eternal peace. About life after death, no one knows. But about this we surely know. There is love after death. Not only do our finest actions invest life with meaning and purpose, but they also live on after us. That's what lives on. The love that we have given to others is one thing death can't kill. And then one last one. This is coming from Anonymous. That's not the anonymous organization that now does all the protests, you know. This is the Anonymous that makes the greeting cards and the bumper stickers. What is coming, Anonymous? Unitarian Universalists. And that, here he is. And Anonymous says, I am a Unitarian Universalist because I believe in life before death. And to that, at least I say,